First things first, everyone wants to know, did this have coil whine? Is it worth $150 more? Hey, what's up? John Shred here, and today we are taking a look at the MSI 4070 Ti Gaming X Trio. I'm gonna unbox it, show you the card in detail, maybe compare it to a 4080, look at the sound, benchmarks, lighting, and hopefully help you decide if this card is for you. Hey, what's up? Welcome back. If this is your first time here, thank you for joining. I love reviewing new technology, and right now we're looking at this card. Now, if you haven't seen any of the other reviews I've done, the most comparable to this one would have been the Zotac 4070 Ti, which, I'm surprised at how many people were interested in that card, and so I thought, why not grab the Gaming X Trio? I recently looked at the 4090 version of this card, and it is by far my favorite 4090. Yes, it had some coil whine, so that's something that I'm gonna look at this one to see if it also has coil whine or if it's more prominent in the 4080, 4090s. Can you get away with it with a 4070 Ti? So, being that the 4090 was my favorite in the Gaming X Trio, I actually hated the card in the 3000 series, so I'm very happy that MSI has improved it for 4000. But yeah, I really hope this at this price point, being the fact that it's, I'm gonna say reasonable price, and I'm gonna get trashed in the comments, because yes, they're all overpriced, but in comparison to the other cards, in comparison to a 4080 or 4090, we'll talk about pricing on this one. So here, let's get this unboxed. The first thing I've noticed is this card versus the 4090. It comes with this sleeve. Now, I don't really care about these sleeves. To me, it's somewhat a waste of paper, and they just get thrown out. At least with a box, you can save the box, highlight the box, showcase the box, and then it has this kind of wrap around it. I do like the fact that MSI does wrap the whole card with this little bit of plastic, just so you know that it is for sure unopened. It's just a nice touch. So let's get it out of here. All right. What do we have? Accessories. We have a 2 8-pin. Let me take it out here so you can take a peek at it. A 2 8-pin power connector. Okay, come on, give me some focus. There we go. So anyone looking, I know the Zotac was actually 3-pin for the Trinity OC, but 2-pin for the non-OC. So, MSI has gone a little different approach with their GPUs, whereas even the 4090 MSI Gaming Trio only required three 8-pin connectors. And so I'm not surprised that coming down to a 4070 Ti, they're down to 2. So, if you have a smaller power supply, an older power supply, this might be the solution for you. Cool, MSI usually always provides these sag brackets, so I'm surprised that they do with this card. We'll see how big this card is. Okay. Right away, it feels heavier than the Zotac. That was my biggest comment with the Zotac, was just how small it was, which is kind of cool. Really nice for a form factor. Okay, here is the first look. Now, to me, looking at it for the first time, it's very, very similar to the 4090 I was looking at. It's a little bit less wide. Lengthwise, I'm not sure. I actually don't have the card. If you haven't seen the review of the 4090 here, I returned it because the coil whine was so bad. I wish I still had it to do a direct comparison. But what else do we have? Your 12 volt power connector. If you don't have a dedicated cable yet for your power supply, a 12 volt cable, much like this guy right here, which is the Corsair one. I just did a video about the mod DIY cable that I picked up for my EVGA power supply that worked really, really well, and I recommend doing it. Cable Mod also has some nice cables, but here, I mean, everything else looks pretty standard. You do, even on the 4070 Ti, have dual BIOS switch, so that is also very nice. Cool. Okay, let me grab this 4080 Eagle OC and put them side by side. Lengthwise, they are identical. No difference there. And as I figured, hopefully this top-down shot can see the width. The 4080 is a little bit wider, as I was kind of thinking that the 4090 is in the same boat. So you can see kind of, yeah, it's just a bit more thick. Interesting enough, I mentioned this in the 4080 review. They're both, I would say the 4080 3-card slot and the 4070 Ti has a 2.5 card slot, whereas they actually with the 4070 they actually have pretty much 2.5 brackets there. But interesting enough, the 4080 Eagle that is a 3-card slot only has 2. Almost kind of 1.5. So very odd that Gigabyte didn't support the card better. But yeah, I mean, all in all, they're the same length. So that is definitely something to consider with this MSI 4070 Gaming X Trio. It is long. So I wish I had the Zotac here to compare it. The Zotac is much smaller than this card. So if you do have case restrictions, maybe the Zotac is the one for you. So, I mean, let me install it. I have this system here in this Corsair 5000 X case, and it's a 12900K S. Let me slap that in there. It's been my test system for a while now, but we can get it in there. This is a pretty, I would say, the Corsair 5000 X mid-size case. So let me grab it, we'll slap it in and just see how it looks installed, as well as with the lighting. One of the biggest features that I did love about the Gaming X Trio was this slash kind of that goes across, and I think it has a really cool feel to it. So yeah, let's get it in there, turn it on right away, look at the lighting, and then go from there. All right, and we're in. I struggled a little bit there. I had to take out the 3rd slot. Like I say, I've had the 4080 in this system, and it only requires two of these little slot things. So, I mean, had to remove the 3rd one. That was good. And then also these nubbies at the end. These are the HDMI and DisplayPort kind of gap fillers. If you keep those in, sometimes you can't, it gets in the way with installing the card. So anyway, we're in. Sorry if I ended up blocking the camera there for a bit, but it is in. Let's get some power to it and turn it on and see how the lighting is. So, I mean, just as I expected, the lighting is identical to the 4090, which is awesome. I mean, I love when you can get a card that looks just as high-end for a much more reasonable price. And that's where this 4070 Ti, I think, fits really well in comparison. I mean, it is right on par with a 3090 Ti, but the price point is way cheaper than either of those cards. And you get all the new technology, right? The DLSS 3.0. Yeah, so that they definitely added a bunch of really cool things to the 4000 series. But yeah, as for lighting, like I said, you can kind of see the slash here a little bit, as I recommended in the 4090 review of this card. Mount it vertically if you want to see the cool slash at all times. I think that would be my preferred way to mount it. So yeah, I mean, that's it right now. Let me do some benchmarks. I don't hear any coil whine right now, but note that the coil whine usually only happens when you start to put load under the card. So once I get into some benchmarks, play some games with it, that's when I'll test the audio levels and find out if this card has any coil whine. So stay tuned and I'll be right back.
3 days later.
And I'm back. Now, after a couple days of testing with this card, it came back exactly as I had hoped. Let's look at the benchmarks now. I compared this card to my trusty old favorite EVGA 3090 Ti for the Win Ultra and the recent Zotac 4070 Ti Trinity OC I reviewed. Much like the Zotac's tests, the card came back running about 5% slower than a 3090 Ti, but that was easily overcame by overclocking a bit to make up that difference. Now, how did it compare to the Zotac card though? Well, I mean, at stock speeds, it was pretty much identical. The major difference was MSI's ability to overclock further than the Zotac, with an increased performance of 2 to 5% more. I mean, am I surprised given the fact that it's a bigger card? Maybe Zotac decided not to push their OC capabilities and keep a smaller form factor on purpose. So it always goes to do with the trade-off, right? Bigger card, better cooling, more OC, smaller card and not. I mean, it's kind of up to you, but in this case, I think MSI decided to go with the larger card. Am I surprised that it can OC better? I mean, not really. The thing is pretty much the same size as that Eagle 4080 I was showing. So, I mean, I would hope that it has more potential for overclocking. If you're enjoying this video, please take a moment, hit a thumbs up, and I mean, if you're into me and this channel, subscribe. Now, speaking of overclocking, here are the settings I used on this MSI 4070 Ti gaming. I was able to get the core up to plus 200 megahertz, bringing the total megahertz up to just over 3030 megahertz, breaking that 3000 megahertz threshold. The VRAM, I was able to do plus 1600 megahertz, bringing it up to 12,101 megahertz. Now, the power draw on this card is 200, by default, is 285 watts, with the OC capability of bringing it up to 305 watts. Not a really big jump, and it really didn't make a big difference in the benchmarks. But if you remember from the Zotac Trinity OC review, the overclocking was horrible. I mean, it couldn't break that 3000 threshold, and I couldn't get over 12,000 on the VRAM either. So I mean, kudos to MSI for having that extra overclock ability. Now, when you buy a card, do you care if it has overclock potential? Or are you the type that just wants to buy a card out of the box and just know that it'll work and it'll be solid without having to tweak it? Let me know, leave a comment down below. Okay, let's talk noise level. Now, first things first, everyone wants to know, did this have coil whine? It did. A tiny, tiny little bit, and when comparing it to the 4090, the one that I returned because it was so bad, it was nothing. I mean, I'm starting to see more and more feedback and comments that all the 4000 series cards has a bit of coil whine, and to me, this was hardly noticeable once you get into a game, this fan spin up, but it is there. Now, when we're talking actual noise levels of the card, I did the usual tests. The ambient levels in my office were 40 to 45 dB, and when you start to run the Heaven benchmark, it runs up to 55, 60 dB, which is similar to all the other cards. I mean, to me, my all-in-one cooler pump spinning up along with the 3 fans tend to make more noise than any GPU I've been testing. I'll give the audio levels 2 thumbs up on this card. A-okay. The lighting on this card is absolutely identical to the 4090 series. Now, MSI has did an amazing job at brand recognition, brand consistency in their Gaming X Trio line. If you buy a 4070 Ti, a 4080, a 4090, they all look the same. Sure, the 4090 is a bit thicker, but other than that, they're pretty bang on. As always, you can control the RGB through MSI's Mystic Light software, which you need to get. You first have to download the MSI Center package and then download the one. It's a little bit convoluted just to get the RGB software, but it works fine and you can tweak and change all the colors. As I mentioned earlier, the best way to visualize this card, in my opinion, is through a vertical GPU mount. The thermals on this card were great. I mean, when testing it using the Heaven benchmarking tool, the core didn't go over 68 and the VRAM was a bone-chilling 58 degrees. Now, I'm realizing that the benchmark, the Heaven benchmark itself, doesn't push the card strong enough, like hard enough, to really raise the temps. So now I've started using the 3D Mark Speedway, a newer benchmarking tool, and that started to see what I truly expected. And it brought the core temps up to 77 degrees, and then your VRAM was at 72. All extremely capable, normal, all within specs, totally fine. These temps were slightly better than the Zotac, but I mean, given the size difference, not that much better. Lastly, let's talk price. Now this is where I think things get really interesting. When I reviewed the Gaming X Trio, the 4090, I gave it my most favorite card, best bang for your buck, because it was $50 more than the 4090 Founders Edition. Now, this is a little different when it comes to the 4070 Ti. Now, the 4070 Ti doesn't have a Founders Edition, so the cheapest card we can look at right now is the Asus TUF, coming in at $799. Comparing it now to this Gaming X Trio, I mean, if you look at bestbuy.com, it's coming in at $899. And that's $100 more expensive for what is supposed to be kind of similar cards. Back when I compared the 4090 to the TUF, it was the opposite. I mean, the 4090 Gaming X Trio was only $50 more than the Founders Edition, but then the TUF card was $150 more than that. So it's like they flip-flopped on us. And then when you look at Best Buy in Canada, it's a similar story. The Gaming X Trio is $150 more than the cheapest 4070 Ti, which is the Zotac Trinity. And then if you look at the TUF OC, it's $75, kind of in the middle, less than the Gaming X Trio. All in all, the pricing on the 4070 Ti that MSI put it in definitely sits it up in that mid-tier bracket. Now, is it worth $150 more than the Zotac Trinity OC? I don't think so. What's my final conclusion for this card? It looks incredible. As I was saying, if you just had this in your system and you walked by, a normal person would not be able to be like, oh, that's a 4070 Ti. It could be a 4080, it could be a 4090. You wouldn't really know. So it definitely has a big GPU statement piece, especially if you're going for a black on black aesthetic. The downside is the size and the price. So the size, as I said, it's similar to the 4080, 4090 in size. So I mean, if you don't have the space in your case, it could be a no-go. And the price, well, I mean, if you need the aesthetic, if you want the black on black, I mean, I'll show you here. I mean, on my other build, my Thermaltake P3 case, it's black on black. So when I put it in there, it looks slick. In here, I mean, it's kind of black on white on gray. I mean, I actually think the Eagle 4080 looks better with the gray, with the other gray. So aesthetics matter. It's all kind of how you put the build. Now, is that worth $150 plus the overclocking capability? I think so, if that's what you need. But I still think that the Zotac is the better overall bang for your buck. Let me know if you're thinking about picking up an MSI 4070 Gaming X Trio. And I mean, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more videos and stay tuned for the next one.